Hello. This is a part of my testimony. Have you ever felt like God was trying to get your attention? Well, that's exactly what I realize in hindsight now, leading up to this incident that happened in 1998. My last two pregnancies, I was on bed rest. I was on bed rest for 6 months with my daughter, Haley. And then with my third child, Corbin, I was on bed rest for 7 months. When Corbin was born, he was jaundice, so I had to keep going to the hospital to have his blood drawn and dragging along his two sisters, which was a very traumatic thing for them to witness every time. But after he was clear of the jaundice, all three of them ended up getting the flu. So I again had to go to the doctor for the flu, and then they all got ear infections. Had to go to the doctor for that, and then they all got a vomiting virus, including the dog. So needless to say, I was up to here with sicknesses and going to the hospital and to the doctors. And I made that very clear to the Lord. I was like, I am so sick and tired of going to the doctors and the hospital. And then that's when this happened. My daughters were playing in the hallway, and Amanda, my oldest, got hurt, and she come in, and I was coddling her and rubbing her back, and I felt a bump on her back, and I thought it was her shoulder blade, but realized it was lower than her shoulder blade. And I asked her, did you fall at school or something and get hurt? And she told me she fell at recess. I called her teacher, and her teacher didn't know anything about it, so I kind of kept an eye on it for couple days, and to me it just appeared like it was getting bigger. So I called her doctor, made an appointment, went in. When he looked at it, he didn't seem like he was very concerned about it, but as a precaution, he sent me to the hospital with her to get an MRI. When I got to the hospital, the radiologist decided to just do a chest x-ray, and because I had my infant and my 2.5-year-old with me, and he felt that would take a lot less time. So he did a chest x-ray, and he came into me and he told me that I needed to go back to my doctors, that he was probably going to be sending us to Children's Hospital, that there was a mass in her chest. And I asked to see the x-ray, and you could see there was something there between her heart and her lungs. So I was devastated, to say the least, and I couldn't get a hold of my husband because we didn't have cell phones yet. He did have a pager, but I had to page him and then wait for him to get to a phone to call me. And I had to try to keep it together with 3 kids there all alone. It was really difficult. Anyhow, after I got home, I went for a walk, and I just was pouring my heart out to the Lord and just begging him to please not take my little girl, my firstborn child. And as I was crying out to him, I thought of Abraham having to sacrifice Isaac, his firstborn. And I felt like God was telling me that she belonged to him, and if he wanted to take her, he could. And at that point, I just surrendered her. And I said, okay, Lord, she's yours. She doesn't belong to me. She was a gift, and she's really yours. And if you're going to take her, just please don't let me have to see her suffer. But I had an overwhelming sense of peace come over me. And then I also repented for all the whining and complaining I did about going to the hospital and the doctor's office for other things, because I would much rather be doing that again for the flu and the earache and vomiting than to deal with what we were having to deal with now. I shared with a friend of mine, Michelle, what was going on, and she decided to send out a prayer chain email. And several people started to pray for Amanda. And in the morning that we were taking her to Children's Hospital, another friend of my husband's called. His name was Tom, and he said to my husband that he heard that we had a challenge with our daughter, and that he was praying for us on his way to work, and that for some reason the 3 little pigs had popped into his head. And he said that he thought to himself, Rich, the big bad wolf's knocking at your door, but everything's going to be okay because you built your house out of bricks. My husband is a brick mason. And again, I had an overwhelming sense of peace that came around about me. We got to the hospital, and after the CT scan, the doctors were pretty certain that it was a cancerous tumor. They told us several different protocols that they could try. They took her to surgery to put in a port for chemotherapy. They also took a biopsy with needles to check for cancer. Fortunately, it came back clean and there was no cancer cells. And they told us that the tumor was much larger than they initially thought. Then they decided to do an MRI. After an MRI and a bone scan, a bone marrow testing, and still finding no cancer, they decided to do surgery to remove it. Before she had her surgery, my mother-in-law had brought in a present for Amanda from somebody from our church. And when Amanda opened it up, it happened to be a Beanie Baby, and it was a piglet. And I felt like that's got to be a sign. And then the next day, when my husband and his mom came up, he said, "You're never going to believe what we saw on the way up here." And I said, "What?" He said, "I got behind this van, and there was a bumper sticker on the back of this van, and it had a pig and a wolf on it. And it said, 'Smart folks still build their houses out of bricks.'" I was like, no way. And again, I just had this overwhelming sense of peace, and I felt like this has got to be a sign from the Lord. And everything's going to be okay. The surgery itself took 6.5 hours. They had to remove 3 of her ribs. And we were told that the tumor itself was the size of a cantaloupe and a large orange. It had tentacles that went down around her aorta, into her spine, and wrapped around her ribs. My friend Michelle told me that there were a lot of people that wanted our address because they wanted to send her a card and well wishes. And we received so many cards and letters and gifts from all over the world, Japan, Haiti, all over the place. There were so many people praying for her, and one lady just happened to have one of those bumper stickers and mailed it to me. And she enclosed a guardian angel pin that was pink. And she told me she didn't know what my daughter's favorite color was or when her birthday was, but she decided on pink because she knew that most contractors' children were born in the fall and winter months. And it just happened to be Amanda's birthstone. After her surgery, they confirmed that there were cancer cells, but they couldn't tell if it was maturing to become all cancer from being benign or the opposite, if it was benign and was just starting into cancer. So we had to go every 6 months for 2 years for MRIs to keep an eye on it to make sure what was left in her spine didn't get reactivated. I am so happy to say that that girl is 30 years old today. And it was during this time that God became very real to me. I experienced him in a way that I had never experienced him before. And it was this time that I knew that the God I believed in was real. And he walked with me through this every step of the way. It's amazing how God meets you where you're at, and he speaks to you in ways that only you can understand. And he is my rock and my strength, and he shall be all the days of my life. Thank you.